Thank you so much, Todd. Oh, there you are, for an awesome introduction. And we're really excited to be here and have an opportunity to share some information with you guys and basically just kind of dialogue about the community and giving you guys the tools and kind of troubleshooting questions that you feel like you have to make you feel like you're prepared, or you know kind of how to navigate the environment when you show up on Saturday for this event. So like Todd said, my name is Allison Crosby. I'm the Director of Program Development for Illumination Foundation. And just to kind of get a feel of the room for you guys, can I see, at least for a show of hands, who plans to attend the event this Saturday? Okay, so everybody, that's great. And then can I see, by a show of hands, people who have had some kind of interaction with the homeless community before? Oh, wow, great, awesome. Okay, so we're going to popcorn a little bit. For those of you who have had some experience with the homeless population, can you share with me a little bit kind of what your experience was or what kind of activities you were involved with in partnership with the homeless community?
I was involved with an organization in the Inland Empire called Food Not Bombs.
Oh, wonderful.
To the Pomona courthouse and feed homeless on the weekends.
Wonderful, thank you. Who else? I saw a lot more hands go up than one.
With the public defender's office for 22 years, so most of a good chunk of that is our client base is transient, is homeless. We're involved in a lot of outreach and services with the transient population in Santa Ana, getting people's misdemeanors cleared, warrants cleared, and all of that.
Great, thank you. Who else? I saw a lot of hands over here.
I was a summer intern at Public Council for their homelessness prevention law project.
Great.
And helped the homeless and get general relief.
Wonderful, great, wonderful. Who else?
Work the kitchen at Mary's kitchen right now.
Wonderful, Mary's Kitchen. They just suffered a fire recently. Yeah, they are. Thank you. Who else? Yes.
I've been to some Care Soup Kitchen just to make every year and makes that effort serving food to homeless.
Wonderful. So kind of by a show of nods, I feel like for most of people's orientation is either through some kind of direct legal support, obviously fitting for the group, or some kind of support in terms of direct service provision or basic needs, so like food, clothing, toiletries. Does that seem to be a fairly good representation of people's experience? Okay, cool. So the PowerPoint that I have up here is one that we generally use for communities who are interested in learning a little bit more about the homeless population, different barriers that people commonly experience, and kind of just expanding our frame of reference, really, in terms of being able to feel comfortable having an interaction with somebody who we don't necessarily feel like maybe we have very much in common with. For a lot of my experience in terms of me becoming an ally or a community member of the homeless population or of homeless communities, specifically the Civic Center, I've been working with that community for about 10 years. One of the biggest anxieties people tend to have in entering into that environment is like, how do I start a conversation? Like, what am I supposed to talk about? Like, feeling really awkward, like, I shouldn't talk about my vacation. Like, I don't want to, like, rub that in their faces, or, like, I don't want to talk about my kids, but do they have kids? Like, what's the relationship with their kids? Like, I don't want to offend anybody. Like, I don't want to be rude. And those are all really normal things. But you guys have really the privilege of being able to be down there with a specific task, which really makes having conversations with people a lot more easy. But you still have to be comfortable or feel a little bit grounded in having some familiarity or kind of small talk conversation, because being able to develop a rapport with somebody or to kind of feel safe to them is ultimately what's going to help them open up to give you the information that you really need. And so you're working with a community who has spent a lot of time working with service providers who unfortunately have made a lot of promises that they weren't able to deliver on for a myriad of reasons. And so there's a lot of skepticism in terms of, I have somebody who looks very polished coming up to me, asking me to give them my personal information and disclose my hardship to them. How can I feel comfortable to actually disclose that information, go through my whole story, a story that I've likely told 100 times to 100 different people, and have faith that this individual is actually going to do something beneficial with the information that I provide them. And a lot of that really just has to do with the way that you have a human connection with somebody in your conversation. And again, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through these slides. We're going to spend some time on certain pieces of information that tend to be common questions people have about barriers that homeless folks struggle with, and also to just kind of talk about ways to have a conversation, ways to expand your frame of reference to help you feel comfortable and ultimately ground you to be able to have a good experience or be able to connect with people in a way that's authentic and feels really genuine. Let's see if I can actually figure this out. Oh, that's a pointer. Oh, here we go. Okay. So really common stuff, you guys know this. What is homelessness? Individuals who are staying on the street, people who are in shelters. Also too, the Orange County community actually has a really high population of people who live long-term in motels because they're on fixed incomes. It's a really common thing. It's also too, you'll hear it kind of commonly in Civic Center as well for people who have benefits that will stay a couple weeks in a motel and then a couple weeks on the street. So that's kind of where people are coming from. And there's also two different types of homelessness tend to be categorized this way in terms of episodic homelessness and chronic homelessness. So episodic homelessness is maybe something that's a temporary situation. You'll come across people who maybe say that they were living with a partner and they had a conflict and they were asked to leave the premises and now find themselves without a place to stay, or had a job, lost their income, weren't able to pay for their apartment anymore. A variety of different things that this might have been their first time homeless, or maybe they've been homeless before, but it's been a long time ago, so it's been a specific situation that has caused a short stint of homelessness. Chronic homelessness is typically for folks who have spent long periods of time on the street, so this is a year or more, and oftentimes you'll find coupled with a long-term disability. So they have some other kind of disabling condition that's also adding to their barriers to be able to access resource and ultimately get back into some type of stability along with their housing and basic needs. So you'll find folks are in terms of what would kind of qualify as a long-term disability. HUD actually defines this either with a physical, mental, or substance-based disability that impairs them long-term. And also too, I love being able to dialogue through content. So if you guys have a question about something I say in particular, if you see something on the slide that strikes your interest, please feel free to raise your hand and interrupt me. I really like being able to have conversation-based presentations. It's a lot more enriching, I feel like, for everybody.
Can I
Yes,
just
please.
say, so again, I'm Bill Tanner, and I'm at Legal Aid, and I love telling the story that it's Todd's fault that I go down there, because he came to our office and talked to the executive director, Bob, and I, and said, hey, we got to do something about Civic Center. Have you guys been down there lately, and this and that? Well, I work at Legal Aid in a building that's a couple miles from there, and I don't handle many cases anymore, so I'm hardly ever there. So I went down there and was blown away at how many people are living there. And the population keeps growing. And so then, it's a long story, but essentially we're there every Thursday now, leading up to this event, trying to get people comfortable to come talk to us. Because initially when we went there, they would not talk to us. We would walk, and we're lawyers from Legal Aid, and can we help you? Yeah. I stopped wearing a suit. I only wore a suit today because I don't wear suits that often, but I had to go to court this morning. But yes, I would wear the T-shirt and jeans or slacks or whatever. We've been wearing them there. We've been promoting the bar's symbols so that they will be familiar with who we are. And what's really amazing is now when we go there on a day that's not a Thursday, like, what are you doing here today? When we're looking for some of the clients that we rent, they're beginning to recognize us. Do not wear a pale blue shirt. They'll think that you're a healthcare agency.
Mental health outreach and engagement.
Yeah, because I was
Unless you
wearing,
are a mental health provider, which also is really awesome, so please.
But so some of these people have been there for a long time. Other people are just brand new there, and to hear their story is kind of interesting. And then other people don't live there, but they come there for the services. So I just wanted to point out there are a whole myriad of people that are there. And I had these, even I work at Legal Aid, but I had these preconceived notions of who I might find there. And it's different. It's the same and different each week.
Thank you for sharing that, Todd. Or Will, sorry. Bill. Sorry, I'm horrible with names. I'm going to move on and do the conversation.
Is the election chart?
It's home, man. Okay, so then this is just basic stats of homelessness in the United States right now. Obviously, Southern California, comparatively to the rest of the country, is pretty inflated. This is something that we probably know, that homelessness has actually been pretty well represented in the media lately because of a lot of different political issues that are going on. And so we as far as a region, are very densely packed or populated with folks who are struggling with housing instability. So just some stats there for you. Again, public perception, and it's okay too. I want people to feel like they have the ability to be transparent about preconceived notions or judgments that they may have about a population because they haven't had an opportunity to interact. This is an opportunity where we are in a safe space to be able to ask questions that we're afraid to ask and ask things that maybe feel offensive and you don't want to say it because it feels offensive, but you want to know. This is the place to do that completely non-judgment.
I totally have a question.
Yes, please.
I heard this interview with this, it was a guy who was being interviewed on NPR at a homeless encampment in Seattle.
Okay.
And they just passed some laws to kind of structuralize that area.
Yes.
Because they realized that a lot of people weren't able to solve the housing crisis, so they were like, let's just build out amenities for them so they can use it.
Yes.
And this guy they interviewed, who sounded pretty young, but he was just like, I like it here. I don't like the society. I don't like mainstream society. I want to be here. Like, we don't need your streets and blah, blah, blah. And that just really struck me because I'd never heard that before.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of resonating in my mind as we're getting closer to this date. And I was just like, I don't know, should I expect some people that are kind of like, I like it here? Or
Yeah,
I prefer it to the motel that I could stay at for 2 weeks?
So as a service provider and as somebody who's had the privilege to be able to develop relationships with people who have lived on the streets long term and getting to know their stories over a long period of time, it is a fundamental belief that I have that nobody wants to be homeless. It's the fact that they have not been given an opportunity that they feel like they can say yes to. The hard thing about the service provider community and the homeless community is that up until recent history, with some evolution and best practices, specifically something called housing first. So if you're interested in practice theory, that's something definitely to take some time to look up, but I won't get into that right now. But there's always been an ulterior motive that folks who are trying to access service feel like service providers have. So yes, I'll let you stay in my shelter, but you have to attend a life skills group, you have to attend a class around financial management, and you have to attend an NA or AA group whether or not you feel like you have a substance abuse issue. So more often than not, there's a lot of attachments to being able to receive a basic need. And so when I hear people say, you know, what was it that you said that he said?
He said something like, we have our own society, we don't need your society, something like that.
So that's, for me, I'd be like, oh, that's like really interesting. Like, tell me about what your society, like, what about that you don't like?
Yeah.
Like, what about that is it that you don't like? Like, what? Because one of my favorite things also, too, in terms of communicating and dialoguing with people in something called a trauma-informed way, is that it asks what happened to you as opposed to what's wrong with you. Because it's not that something is wrong with someone, it's that likely something really traumatic happened to somebody that has built a wall. And so if they're making a very defined statement, like, I don't want services, I'm happy out here, I like my life like this, like, I don't want your help, I don't need your help, it's not what's wrong with you, it's like, wow, like, I wonder what happened to you. Like, what happened? And so that's a kind of a way or a perspective or frame of reference to be navigating your conversations with people, is to think, what happened to you? What's your story? Like, what events unfolded in your life that shaped this worldview that you have now? Because we all have, like, traumatic stuff that's happened in our lives and judgments that we have about certain things or certain places or certain peoples as a result of a traumatic experience or a really negative experience. You know, we all have justifications for the way that our worldview is framed. Same for folks who are struggling with housing instability.
Can I say I've only met one person that said, and I was surprised when he said it. And then I talked to them, and the reality is he doesn't have any option. The more I talked to him about, well, how did you end up here? And so what happened in this and that? I think for him it was sort of a way to cope, to say, no, I'm making a choice to be right here. But every other person that I've run into, I suppose there are some people, I just haven't met them. And the one guy did meet.
Found the one guy that
Yeah.
on the radio,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
So,
She has-
oh yes, please.
I remember I wore my OCBA shirt. I was there maybe the second Thursday after we started the outreach, and I walked up to people who seemed like they wanted to engage, because I
Good for you.
And people approached me.
Good.
Several had already seen the flyers from the week before, and I talked to them. And only one person, I was there at least an hour and a half walking all over the area and talking to people about that upcoming event. Again, so we didn't descend on that.
Yeah.
And it really helped that we were working with Bill's group. But I only had one man who shouted at me when he saw the shirt, "Oh, you're a lawyer. You probably want us to sue everyone." And I didn't know what to say to him, and I kept on talking to other people. But as I recall later, he approached the table and engaged the group, and I don't know what happened, but he was the only one that I felt anything,
Yeah.
what do I do? And
Yeah.
I didn't really have to do anything.
Yes.
I was out there for an hour and a half mingling in the shirt and didn't have any issues.
Wonderful. So I want to respond to that really quickly. Again, I have a lot of content on the slides, but I want to be able to respond to pulses that you guys are giving me based on your interest. So I just want to touch on the fact that you brought up a scenario where somebody is presenting an accelerated energy at you. Someone is presenting.
Accelerated
Someone is accelerated energy.
All right, I'm writing that down.
Do you like that? Is that a good phrase?
I do.
Should I be a
I'm going to use
lawyer?
it in a brief.
Um,
Your Honor, no, he was not being aggressive. He had accelerated energy.
I like to use alternative language. So, for example, you have somebody who is presenting, really upset, super agitated. Obviously, a natural response is to be like, oh crap, I hope I don't get hurt. This is a little scary. The most important thing is to mirror the energy you want to have given back to you. And so if someone is aggressive or if someone is agitated, the most important thing is to be affirming and to try to redirect. So to say it's like, oh, you're just a bunch of lawyers, you want me to sue everyone, like, "Grr." And it'd be like, and just be like, sometimes I have a tendency to laugh because sometimes people are making jokes or trying to be like, buck authority kind of thing. And like, so meet that and be like, if it's something like that, like, bring the energy down a little bit and be like, I can totally understand why you would feel that way. Like, I could totally understand why you would feel that way. But we're actually here to try to want to help people get connected to the resources that they need. So if you might need support in a legal way at all, please feel free to come and talk to us if you're comfortable doing that. We'll be over here for a little while, and if you have I think we'll have snacks and stuff there, won't we? Yes. If you want a snack or you want some water, you're more than welcome to. But whatever you feel like is best for you. So just kind of say be affirming, affirm the statement that they've made. It's a valid feeling or it's a valid judgment. But we're here to just try to kind of make sure that you have access to stuff that might be beneficial. And if you're interested in having a conversation, I'd be more than happy to talk to you. So mirror the energy that you want to get back from someone. Any questions about that? Yes. Yes. So is that part of the content you're covering?
Yeah, but so
I don't
let's
wanna step
no, but we'll keep going. So here's some of these people actually. It would be if they get nothing else out of it, is a nice conversation with some. To be honest, really, because I hope and it seems with Todd and the next couple presidents that we will continue to be down there to develop a relationship of trust. And so maybe that's all that we're going to have is a really good conversation, and they're going to come away and say, wow, because I think our longest person, it's been 8 weeks of working with this woman before now she will tell us what her legal problem is. And so you might think, all I did was talk to one person, but I will tell you that in a few weeks they will probably be back to us. But let's say you get them to talk about a legal issue. Well, then it's analyzing it, and we'll have some little sheets for us to do and some intake that will help lead it. All right? If we can solve whatever that problem is that day, then we'll try and do it, and we'll have some subject matter expert. Veterans Legal Institute, we'll introduce Dwight in a moment, and PLC and Legal Aid and the Public Defender's Office will be there. And if people have hit if the other agencies, I will if we get 100 cases that day, I will take them back to Legal Aid and we will help them. Because I would continue to work with them and then say, okay, hang on right there and go talk to a subject matter expert. And we'll have the tables, and it'll be like a Social Security expert and animal law. And right in front of you is Susanna, who's an animal law attorney, an animal law expert. So if they got tickets, so they got these issues. or whatever, and then try and have you talk to the subject matter expert and go back to them to figure out what it is. Even at legal aid, a lot of it is, hey, we need you to apply for services first. We need the denial letter before we can do anything with you. Now, we should be applying for Social Security, so if that's what they need to do, I should have some experts there with the computer, and we'll do an online application. But for many of them, it's going to be, okay, I need you to go apply for that benefit and get the rejection. If it might be identification issue, a lot of those people are getting their purses stolen or their whatever stolen, and they need identification. So the public defender and legal aid both have the free get an ID form, and we can fill that out at that time. That's been a big thing. So it's going to be a little fluid at this point what you do, but hopefully you'll control a lot of the conversation, come over to a subject matter expert, and then go back. There will be at the table somebody called the subject matter host, who's a paralegal for legal aid, who's been going out there, and she's been at legal aid longer than I have. And she will take all of those cases, whatever they are, and that we will continue to work with them. We've realized those people can't come to our office, so we'll go in there.
I saw it on the application, just real quick.
No, please.
That citizenship status is listed. Is there a prohibition for legal aid assisting people who don't have a permanent resident card or citizenship?
So at this event, we don't really care. It might be a discussion, but for legal aid to accept the case, that there is a problem in that part of our federal rules say we have these certain restrictions, but that's okay because I will find a place to place the case.
Okay, cool.
If you bring it in, PLC has been wonderful, Veterans Legal Institute has been wonderful, and then UCI, Western, Whittier, and Chapman have all got these clinics, and they said, we will help. But I'm looking at it for Bill Tanner and legal aid to see if we can take, and then we can help oversee. That's, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
One question, PLC, they used to do the lawyers' nights at the armories, and staffing those, we would do an intake, and the public defenders used to take some of those and actually run with them after we had determined what it was the person needed. The bulk of them went to PLC, and they actually worked with them. Is your goal for those that come in and have stuff criminal that needs to get cleared to go to you and for you guys to take? Is the public defender
No,
taking any, or
Larissa is going to be there. And so,
gonna be there?
yes, and then also UCI has started a criminal clinic, and they will be there. Legal aid can take infractions, so ones where the public defender won't get appointed. So if they, and we can talk a little bit about those tickets, but no, there's a follow-up, and I think the public defender might be listed first. Yes, where to send the person. Public defender is the first place to go. But Larissa said that she will be there, and that's the hopes. Because we're finding a lot of expungement issues too, and so we want to work with the New Leaf program, and we have a clean slate program.
One little comment on that. I'm not super criminal, but for some of the other issues, our volunteers can, if appropriate, or not required, to essentially sign on to help the person through whatever process. So, for example, if you filled out Social Security forms and you know it's going to go off and come back and more work's going to be done, and you want to help that person in the future, with some pro bono assistance in getting that done, that's not a problem. Obviously, some of the specialties need to stay in certain areas, but we want to encourage folks that if you want to have a continuing relationship with that homeless person and try to see it through, we're not trying to cut that off. So we just see what the issues are as we're going through it.
And PLCs and legal aids, and I'm sure veterans legal malpractice would cover you in taking that, and we'll track your hours and get you for the Wiley Manual Pro Bono Service Award from the Supreme Court.
What an awesome plug. Any other questions around this topic, subject matter? Cool. Go ahead and see what the next slide is. So again, common factors, causes of homelessness. This is from a national assessment, but loss of job is the biggest cause of homelessness. And then you see the way that it kind of moves around the circle, but drug and alcohol is one of the least main causes of homelessness, which is a kind of a myth around the homeless community, thinking that substance abuse and mental illness are the main causes. Now, they do definitely present quite a bit in the chronically homeless community, but is not a main cause of homelessness. So I want to share this one particular video with you because I think it's really telling, first and foremost, about substance abuse as a general topic, and the way that it frames its perspective of recovery, I think is really important because it talks about the communal implications of recovery from substance abuse. And I think it's something important to kind of percolate on a little bit, especially to knowing that you're going to be in a community that either is struggling with substance abuse or is surrounded by someone or someones that are struggling with substance abuse. So it kind of just opens up perspective a little bit. Let's see if I can pull this up. My apologies for the, oh wait, I can skip the ad.
What causes, say, heroin addiction? This is a really stupid question, right? Make more of them, we really appreciate your support. We made an interactive heroin causes addiction. This is a really stupid question, right? It's obvious, we all know it. Heroin causes heroin addiction. Here's how it works. If you use heroin for 20 days, by day 21, your body would physically crave the drug ferociously because there are chemical hooks in the drug. That's what addiction means. But there's a catch. Almost everything we think we know about addiction is wrong. If you, for example, break your hip, you'll be taken to a hospital and you'll be given loads of diamorphine for weeks or even months. Diamorphine is heroin. It's in fact much stronger heroin than any addict can get on the street because it's not contaminated by all the stuff drug dealers dilute it with. There are people near you being given loads of deluxe heroin in hospitals right now, so at least some of them should become addicts. But this has been closely studied. It doesn't happen. Your grandmother wasn't turned into a junkie by her hip replacement. Why is that? Our current theory of addiction comes in part from a series of experiments that were carried out earlier in the 20th century. The experiment is simple. You take a rat and put it in a cage with 2 water bottles. One is just water, the other is water laced with heroin or cocaine. Almost every time you run this experiment, the rat will become obsessed with the drugged water and keep coming back for more and more until it kills itself. But in the 1970s, Bruce Alexander, a professor of psychology, noticed something odd about this experiment. The rat is put in the cage all alone. It has nothing to do but take the drugs. What would happen, he wondered, if we tried this differently? So he built Rat Park, which is basically heaven for rats. It's a lush cage where the rats would have colored balls, tunnels to scamper down, plenty of friends to play with, and they could have loads of sex. Everything a rat about town could want. And they would have the drugged water and the normal water bottles. But here's the fascinating thing. In Rat Park, rats hardly ever use the drugged water. None of them ever use it compulsively. None of them ever overdose. But maybe this is a quirk of rats, right? Well, helpfully, there was a human experiment along the same lines, the Vietnam War. 20% of American troops in Vietnam were using a lot of heroin. People back home were really panicked because they thought there would be hundreds of thousands of junkies on the streets of the United States when the war was over. But a study followed the soldiers home and found something striking. They didn't go to rehab. They didn't even go into withdrawal. 95% of them just stopped after they got home. If you believe the old theory of addiction, that makes no sense. But if you believe Professor Alexander's theory, it makes perfect sense. Because if you're put into a horrific jungle in a foreign country where you don't want to be, and you could be forced to kill or die at any moment, doing heroin is a great way to spend your time. But if you go back to your nice home with your friends and your family, it's the equivalent of being taken out of that first cage and put into a human rat park. It's not the chemicals, it's your cage. We need to think about addiction differently. Human beings have an innate need to bond and connect. When we are happy and healthy, we will bond with the people around us. But when we can't, because we're traumatized, isolated, or beaten down by life, we will bond with something that gives us some sense of relief. It might be endlessly checking a smartphone, it might be pornography, video games, Reddit, gambling, or it might be cocaine. But we will bond with something because that is our human nature. The path out of unhealthy bonds is to form healthy bonds, to be connected to people you want to be present with. Addiction is just one symptom of the crisis of disconnection that's happening all around us. We all feel it. Since the 1950s, the average number of close friends an American has been steadily declining. At the same time, the amount of floor space in their homes has been steadily increasing. To choose floor space over friends, to choose stuff over connection. The war on drugs we've been fighting for almost a century now has made everything worse. Instead of helping people heal and getting their life together, we have cast them out from society. We have made it harder for them to get jobs and become stable. We take benefits and support away from them if we catch them with drugs. We throw them in prison cells, which are literally cages. We put people who are not well in a situation that makes them feel worse and hate them for not recovering. For too long, we've talked only about individual recovery from addiction. But we need now to talk about social recovery, because something has gone wrong with us as a group. We have to build a society that looks a lot more like Rat Park and a lot less like those isolated cages. We are going to have to change the unnatural way we live and rediscover each other. The opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. This video is a collaboration with Johan Hari, the author of the book Chasing the Scream, The First and Last Days of the War on Drugs. He was very kind to work with us on this video to spread the word. We recommend that you give the book a try. Our videos are made.
So, let's hear some responses to that. What was surprising to you? What was interesting? What did you find thought-provoking? Let's share. If people don't openly share, I'll call on people. What was surprising to you? Yes.
Both my parents are very serious addicts, and I noticed when they each met a significant other, that's when they were clean. They were easily able to drop their, major, heroin, cocaine, crack, alcohol, and then when they found the right person, now they're clean.
How interesting.
That's what took for them, like cold turkey almost.
Wonderful. So it kind of affirms their statement about, recovery is really based around connection to people. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. What else? Yes, please. Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah.
But there was nothing to eat. It was kind of like a cage.
Yeah.
The guy worked at the library, obvious problems, although he managed to come to work every day and check out a book and use the equipment.
Yeah.
That's interesting, though. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. What else? Yes.
There's another school study that says whenever you're dealing with an addict, you have to cut them off completely, let them hit rock bottom, until they know how bad it is, then they'll start to climb out of it. But it doesn't sound right. Whereas what they're saying here, like having them in a community and things like
Yeah.
that, sounds more.
Yeah. But on a personal note, and I think that this is an important caveat, so I'm a huge NPR junkie, and I was listening to a report that, if people are familiar with the podcast Invisibilia, this is a really great podcast, recommend it if you like that kind of thing. But they were talking about similar themes, but in the mental health sphere for just the medical world, medical treatment for mental health. And they had a very similar study that had happened, or kind of a comparative analysis, that there was a small town in Germany that had gained a reputation for being a community that would host individuals struggling with severe mental illness, and that they would live in people's homes unmedicated. And so they would be supervised by psychiatrists that lived in the community, but a huge approach to it was the fact that you help promote recovery by living in community. And it was so fascinating to listen to this. But the important caveat that they had in the report is that there's something unique about not being able to provide that same kind of communal support when you have a direct relational attachment to the individual who's struggling. And so, for example, to say, like, if you have a parent or a sibling that's struggling with addiction or mental health, that it's difficult to create that supportive community for them because your emotional connection is too intense. But if you're able to find a community for them that's willing to accept them as they are and be able to work with them and create supports around them, that oftentimes that tends to help promote recovery and for longer periods of time than medication ever would for a comparative analysis of similar people who are struggling with similar diagnoses. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of licensed therapists are not allowed to work with their family members.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why. The emotional attachment is too strong. Too strong. Good observation, though. Thank you for sharing. Anything else? Who else? What else? Yes.
Yeah, so my understanding of addiction is that we want to get away from a painful emotion.
Yeah.
Often that can be guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Those are two of the emotions that are the most painful. And so when we're experiencing that, right, we want to return to some kind of a distraction.
Yeah.
Be it with gambling, with drug use, pornography, shopping, or whatever, to try to get away from the guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that if we don't go back to the cause of the guilt and shame, we're probably going to continue with the addiction.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And that's why I think also, too, in thinking about, you know, we could do a larger cultural societal critique on this theme. You could talk about this forever. But I think one of the reasons that I am so drawn to this video and really love to share it with other people is because it gives you a microcosm view of your role in this, you know, struggle. You know, whether or not you're struggling with homelessness, whether or not you're struggling with substance abuse, whether or not you're struggling with mental health, you still have a role and, from my perspective, a responsibility to create a community that is willing to be able to accept people as they are, to hear their stories, and to try to figure out a way for what you have in your capacity to provide to help embrace this individual, to help promote healing with this individual, and help to try to, you know, inspire them in the way that you can to know that they're worth something and that they have opportunities, or that they can, you know, gain opportunities to find something better. And so for your statement in terms of, like, what if I have a conversation with somebody and it doesn't really go anywhere? Like, I totally appreciate your perspective of the logistics, because I can tell you're a woman who likes to get things done. I feel the same way. It's like, let's get through all the riffraff. Like, I want to get some stuff done. Let's talk about details. This isn't necessarily going to be that kind of event, I think, for the majority of you. This is going to be a kind of event that's like just putting your toes in the water to how deep this pond is. And the important thing is that the surface is actually what counts in terms of being able to sit and have a conversation with somebody, create a space where they feel like they belong. Because I think also, too, as humans, we have an innate desire to belong, to feel a part of something. And there's nothing more marginalizing than being homeless, because the kind of judgments that you get from people, either verbal or nonverbal, as you navigate the world on a daily basis, it's really hard to undo that, especially when you've been living like that for years. So when you walk into, so there's a Burger King just right around the corner of the Civic Center in the courtyard where you guys are going to be doing this event. The stories that I have heard about the way that the staff treat individuals that come into that Burger King, who, like, you come in, they buy a cup of coffee in order to be able to use the bathroom prior to when bathrooms were accessible down there. So this has been like within the last 2 months. The stories that I would hear people tell about the way that the staff would treat them was heartbreaking. And it's enough to be able to shame you into hiding, for at least for me, shame me into hiding for weeks. And, you know, you can think about it from the staff's perspective. They're probably dealing with a lot of individuals who are doing that, people who are disrespectful of the space, and all of a sudden there's a blanket judgment about, you know, you people, and do this and do that, and you shouldn't be here. You know, and it slides very quickly, and all of a sudden it's just kind of a blanket judgment. And so I feel like a lot of folks who are living in homeless encampments or have lived on the streets for long periods of time, it's been a really long time since someone has actually just addressed them as like a normal human being. And I think some of you will likely have an experience where an individual will tell that you're willing to, like, recognize them for their human dignity, and then be so enthusiastic that someone wants to listen to them that you might spend the whole time listening to one person. Like, that's a big possibility, you know, in terms of trying to redirect the conversation to figure out how you can help them is really important. But the likelihood that you might sit and listen to somebody talk for an hour is possible. Because the last time that someone's had the ability to sit down and have somebody who looks successful or who looks accomplished or who looks like they have access to resources, just to kind of have a human-to-human conversation, it's probably been a really long time. And so if you don't provide anything other than that on Saturday, it would have been a really successful event. Yeah. Yes, please. No.
Okay, so I'm really struck by the slide as to the title and the sincerity of being lost of job.
Yes.
So I'm imagining that we may encounter more than one person who that's like, how did you get there, what happened?
Mhm.
It's gonna be lost their job.
Yeah.
So that's a legal argument. So
Correct.
do you have some resources or something that we can be equipped with to give them some guidance?
I do believe we're doing a resource. Are we doing like a referral resource guide?
We should.
Okay.
So with those, what we've done so far is then talk to them about the barriers to getting the next job. Like, what has it been? Sometimes it's been a criminal history. Sometimes it's been the tickets. Sometimes it's been that the day before my bike was taken in one of the personal property seizures that they go through and they do. But we're not going to have a real good answer for that one. We haven't created the job fair yet. Again, this is our first attempt into this, and if that's the result that we get back is, gosh, it would have been nice for the employment and this and that, then we know for the next event next year, I'm hoping we're going to have a couple of these that will know to have that. EDD, hopefully, right there with us and seeing what can help. But I think at this point it's going to be trying to figure out what is preventing you from getting the next job, and is there a legal impediment? Susan Price, who's the homeless czar that the county just hired, said legal issues were the #1 problem that she identified, and she's been doing this for a long time. So while we can't do everything, we can at least do the legal side or give the ear, which I'm learning is going to help us get to the legal side eventually.
Mm-hmm. And it's okay to tell somebody that I'm really sorry, I don't know. Like yeah. Like, it's okay to say that, I'm here specifically today to help people with their legal issues, whatever that might be. And it's okay to also say, too, because I've heard as somebody who, as a lawyer, can help you navigate the legal system, that legal issues tend to be a common barrier to accessing housing, to being able to access housing. And so that's why we're here today, being able to try to figure out how we can help you in any legal way, whether or not it has to do with your housing. And so if someone asks you for information that you don't have or you're not sure, it's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to say, I don't know. Like, I'll be there that day, and I believe we'll have, I think a couple of my team members are also coming with me. So we'll probably have some other direct service providers who will also be there. So if something like that pops up, more than happy to try to troubleshoot the questions for you while I'm there. But I give you permission to say, I'm sorry, I don't know. Like, I'm here specifically today to try to help folks out with legal issues. It's okay to say that.
In this event, there was there's a committee, almost as many people as are in this room were on the committee, and everybody had a different idea. And at some point, Todd just said, you know what? We're lawyers, and we're going to go there, and we'll try and solve the legal needs. Maybe the next event, we'll bring a whole bunch of social service agencies to help with some of the others, but we've got to just do one thing this year and get it done. Otherwise, it's going to be next year before we do anything. But I think that we can do a lot of good.
Yeah. So we're going to have a canned dialogue in front of you guys. I have one more video that I would like to show. It's a little bit longer, but I also do want to stop at 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Is that our stop time?
We'll be okay. I can talk really fast, I think.
So.
Because they're lawyers and we give them written materials, and I'll explain them really quick, right?
Okay, awesome.
The law students, and they're used
to
to it.
interpret the materials, or we can help you troubleshoot it. The next video that I want to show you guys is touching a little bit on trauma-informed care. So again, thinking about this idea of trauma, what happens especially to when you experience early childhood trauma, and the way that either motivates or demotivates with people who are trying to help you. As quickly as I can try to pull this up.
gives consent. And today what I'm hoping is we can break some silence, even when it's uncomfortable, because I think we want to do important things. What I want you to reflect on is if you or someone you know has experienced one of the following 10 events prior to the age of being 18: emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, feeling unloved or unwanted by your family, being afraid your basic needs might not get met, a divorce or separation of your caregivers, witnessing domestic violence in your home, someone with a substance abuse issue or a mental health issue in your home, someone in your home incarcerated, all prior to the age of 18. I've just defined adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, otherwise known as childhood emotional trauma. And it's a health risk that increases social problems in our community, raises our risk for disease, and can even shorten our lifespan. The Center of Disease Control names it as the prime determinant of health. And yet, unlike texting while driving or smoking cigarettes when we're young, for most of us, it's still an unknown epidemic. And yet 70% of the general population has had at least one of those events happen. That's 1,050 people in this room and about 7 people in your row. 1 out of 6 of us has had 4 or more of those events happen. And that's 240 people in this room and probably 1 or 2 people in your row. And yet we're not talking about it. Even though when it goes above a 4, some pretty hard statistics come about. At a 4, we're over 1,500% more likely to attempt suicide, over 550% more likely to become an alcoholic, COPD, liver disease, asthma. At a 6, we're more likely to die 20 years younger than our counterpart, at age 60 instead of age 80. And so we need to embrace what this silence costs us. I want to introduce you to Henry. At 18 months old, Henry moves into your community, and neighbors go to knock on his door. But they hear loud screaming and noise inside, and they look at each other and say, you know, we do Crime Hood Watch and checking building maintenance, but I don't know if we're in for this. And so they walk away. At 2.5 years old, he goes to daycare, and they notice Mom has a bruise on her eye, and Henry's kind of aggressive in class. And they go, Director, should we do something about this? No, she says, we're in charge of good quality childcare, not this. And so things go on. At 5 years old, he's put upstairs in his room and he hears a loud crash downstairs, and he comes downstairs and Mommy's bleeding on the kitchen floor and Dad's standing above her. 4 big police officers burst down the door. They grab Dad and put him in the police car, grab Mom, put her in the ambulance, grab Henry and lock him in the car. A woman comes and taps on his window. She has his things in a garbage bag and says, come on, let's go. He drives to a new neighborhood where he knows no one. Falls asleep in a bed, not in his pajamas, crying himself to sleep. He wakes up in the morning going to a new school that he doesn't know, and the teacher yells at him because he has a hard time following the rules, and he says, wow, that sounds like Dad, and I don't even know where Dad is. And next, he moves from school to school, and his foster care parents get angry at him, and they start yelling at him and begins wetting his bed at night until a new social worker comes and says, come on, put your things back in the garbage bag. We got to move again. And he wonders how many places he's going to have to live, where his parents are, and if he'll see them again. His behavioral health file gets this thick, and so does his school file, until one day they tell him his parents aren't his parents anymore, termination of parental rights. And so now he's up for adoption, but nobody really wants him. And so he's in his 10th foster care placement at 11 years old, and foster dad and foster mom are fighting, and he thinks, I'm never going to watch someone put their hands on someone else again. And he steps in and he takes a swing, and the next thing he knows, he's in handcuffs in juvenile detention. Now that's a tough story to hear. And what I want you to think about is 12 systems and 50-plus people crossed Henry and his family's life. And yet no one thought it was their job to connect with them about that hard story. And that doesn't make sense to me because, right, we're caring people. All of us are. And so I wonder, maybe it's because we were taught it's not our role. It's not our place. Or maybe from a more hidden part of ourselves, we think that's Henry, that's his family. We can't change stuff like that. That's them and this is us. What I want you to hear today is this is not an us-them conversation. This is an all-of-us conversation. And if we choose to keep our story of silence, this epidemic's going to grow. And that feels uncomfortable, right? And if I'm doing this right, you feel uncomfortable because when we get uncomfortable, we grow, and that's a good thing. And you might be saying, Allison, what do you want me to do about this? I mean, I don't know how to break this silence. I might not have the right letters behind my name. I might not have any letters behind my name. I mean, violence and abuse, that seems like pretty big stuff. And what I would say to you is this: 70% of why anyone changes a negative health behavior is because of the person who connects with them and inspires them to change that. Relationship is the evidence-based practice, connection, and you don't need the right letters or any letters to do that. So I want to tell you about Kat. Kat had 8 of those 10 things happen before she was 19 years old. She went from residential placement about between the ages of 13 and 19, about 8 to 10. And she was the kid that broke windows and tore down doors. Sometimes she was held down in restraints and injected with Thorazine. She tells the story of a nurse who one time said, "You know what, Kat, act your age, not your shoe size. I own this place. You got to come through me to get out of here." And that's who Kat would have thought she was until she met Howard, a mental health tech who had no letters behind his name, but he understood connection, and he was willing to go past his role. And he said, "You know what, Kat, I get we need to connect," and he had to find her motivation. So he took her to the gym and said, "You know what, I want you to exercise, and if you give me 1 solid hour of really good exercise, I'll let you go back to the unit and tear everything up." And she said, "Hell yeah," right? The joke was, though, that when she walked out of that gym, she was crawling and she couldn't lift a chair to throw, okay? And that was Howard's plan, although she didn't know that. And so Howard looked at her and he said, she began telling these chapters of her story. And he said, "You know what, Kat, I see something in you. You're going to do something important in your life." Well, Kat had never heard that before, and so she liked that. So she did what Howard didn't plan and got locked up a lot to see him. That wasn't the intention. And so she came there one day, and he said, "Kat, you coming here to see me?" And she said, "Yeah." And he said, "Here's my schedule. Meet me in the lobby." Right? We don't need to do that. So she did. That's how she got through high school. The thing is that hard stuff doesn't stop happening at 18. Kat went away to college. She was raped. She went through a serious suicide attempt, and she came back to the adult psychiatric institution, the same place where she was as a kid. Howard found out she was being admitted, and at 2 in the morning, he came to her admission and said, "Kat, please don't give up before you know what you can become. I'm going to hold hope right here till you're strong enough to grab it. Right here." That was the last time Kat attempted suicide, the last time she was locked in a residential placement, and the first job she ever had was a psych tech on a unit like Howard's because she promised to pay that connection forward. Now, we're sitting here with 2 stories, and that's the intention. For centuries, stories have taught us how to make meaning. Dr. Brené Brown teaches us that we are hardwired for connection, and that one of our deepest fears is disconnection, that fear of not belonging. And so we're sitting with the story of disconnection and connection. And that gives us a choice. We can think about Henry before he threw that punch, the 12 systems that crossed his path, the 50+ people that chose not to connect. And we can think, maybe if somebody had connected earlier, that story could have been different. And we can think about Kat, because Kat might not be who you think, because Kat's story is my story. My nickname throughout school was Alley Cat. And if Howard had not made a decision to connect with a kid like me, I truly believe I would have been in an institution, dead, or probably in jail. And so we're not powerful enough to know who's had trauma and who hasn't. We're not powerful enough to know who makes it and who doesn't. But we're powerful enough to do 2 things. 1, teach someone else about childhood trauma as a health issue. And 2, make that risk of connection. I think about if somebody came up to me and said, "You know, Allison, I saw this awesome doctor on Friday talk about childhood trauma, and they told me that I should tell someone about it, and I'm wondering if you would listen." I think I would have listened, and I think it would have made a difference. Mavis Leno once said, "If you want to make a difference in the world, the next time you see someone being cruel to another human being, take it personal, because it is." And what I would add to that powerful statement is the next time someone gives you the honor of walking their trauma, their pain story in front of you, answer that call with connection. Because you see, ordinary acts of courage can change this. It's not going to be the monumental events. Thank you so much for listening to my story.
So that's what I want to leave you guys with. Trauma is really important. It's affected a lot of people, I'm sure, in this room, and then, folks who are on the street. And so I think it's important to realize that being able to have a state of mind where you have the willingness to embrace somebody, and then also realize you have an ulterior motive in the back of your head to help them with their legal issues. That's what it's about. How do you enmesh these two things? How do you make a genuine human connection for people to be able to trust you, and then you get access to the information that you need in order to help them. So, thanks.
Let me got to finish with that. Get my stuff. It's been very interesting to me again. I'm a legal aid lawyer, but what I realize is I work in a building and everybody's coming to me when they're ready to solve their legal issues. Now I'm going to where they're at and they're not all ready to solve their legal issues, so I'm having to help them. How we did it the first couple of times is we took water. As crazy as that sounds, bottled water got people to talk to us because they're living in a place where they didn't have access to water except for a spigot on the side of one of the buildings. And so we go, "Hi, can I talk to you?" And it's a little cruel. And I say, "Can I talk to you?" Like this. But so hopefully we do. Some of the things is we have a woman there that we're working connecting her with her tribe in Oklahoma. And that's been a blast, talking to her each week and getting the next step, trying to get her birth certificate, her parents' birth certificate, and all of this stuff. As crazy as this sounds, some guy moved from Los Angeles to Orange County, and he can't get his Medi-Cal transferred. It took a lawyer in our office to get that done. He had been trying for about a year, and it sounds ridiculous. And I talked to the lawyer who's doing it because, no, Bill, that's the reality of the system. And so get that. Some of the child support stuff. So people will be there from the Department of Child Support Services. Rules at the courtyard. The courtyard has a lot of rules for the people, and that is they can bring their dogs inside and their cats inside. They can come in and sleep in a safe place. They can't use drugs. I've been there many times, and it feels really safe. The group that's running it, they seem like they know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for 102 years. I wanted to run by some of the stuff you have in here. So there's this page, which is what we'll be handing people when they come if they didn't get this, but you'll have it, and if you come, you'll get this again. And it's just check in. If you're a subject matter expert, get over to the tables. They have a table for food, or a tent for food, and then they have 2 big tents for service providers. And we'll be there, and we'll have the subject matter expert tables. Like, this is Social Security, and this is whatever it is, and this is whatever it is. And so hopefully we'll have the experts behind there, and then you can be walking around and interviewing people. And we'll have some other people who have been at Legal Aid or volunteering that have been doing this a long time, and they'll have little things that call them a guide. And if you want to walk out with them under the Civic Center so we can go to the people who are there. What I'm told is on Saturdays there's a lot more people there because there's more services that are provided there. So you won't find just the people that live there at Civic Center all the time. You'll find people who are not ordinarily there. Follow-up. If you look at the second page, there's a sheet right there. And so one question you may have is about conflicts. And so you've had this. The Supreme Court answered that and said you will not have a conflict. And if you want to read up on the rules, you will not have it. This is the informed consent. And for those of you that want it in writing, it doesn't have to be. But if you want it in writing, it's right at the top. We took the language out of the rule of court. But then what you can do is tell the client what is their next step and who they should follow up with, what entity or legal. Now, it might make it easier if you bring them over to the entity, to Legal Aid's tent or to the Public Defender's tent or to Veterans Legal Institute or wherever they're at and grab them. You will run into people who have an existing case file because we have to keep coming to them. Christina, will you raise your hand? You'll see people like Christina around, and we have, I think we did 30 expungements over the weekend for the folks, and so they'll be coming to the event, to this event. There are people who live there. We took their files back. I mean, it's amazing how logistically, how problematic it is to serve this population. It's really bizarre. And so I didn't go to the armories before. Can I imagine what you guys went through having done this now? But we have to keep shuffling things back and forth. We have a Wi-Fi hotspot. Todd's going to have a couple more. Yes?
I don't know where to go.
You don't know where the courtyard is?
No.
Okay, so it is right at the bottom of this informed consent follow-up. It's 1000 East Santa Ana Boulevard. So do you know where the County Board of Supervisors building is? And the tax collector? Yeah. There's a parking lot right below where that is. They're on the other side of Santa Ana Boulevard. Yes. Yes. There's a parking lot right where where the County Board of Supervisors is. Unfortunately, it's a paid lot for that day. We're going to storm the Board of Supervisors, see if we can get a bunch of passes, but so far we don't have them. But there's a parking lot right there. Inside the courtyard, they have, and there's power. Yes.
The courtyard used to be the Orange County Transit.
Yes, the old bus station has been transported, and they have the showers in there as of last Thursday. They had the first set of showers for folks. They have the washers and dryers, and I think it's going to be porta potties, so you might plan accordingly. Choose your coffee. Yeah. And I hope to have, so at the tents inside the courtyard where the people are, and they have a whole bunch of tables and stuff, inside the tents where we'll have a lot of the subject matter experts where clients probably will not be. We'll probably have to go out and try and be available to talk to them. There should be a translator in each of the tents. So if you run into somebody that you need a translator, you should be able to come to the tent and take the translator with you. There will be a subject matter host there, Mary Aranda, who can also help guide you. Everybody in this room is really special to me because I'm glad that you're here. But Dwight, will you raise your hand? Not to pick you out, but Dwight runs the Veterans Legal Institute. And so you're going to see people like Dwight there. And
So if you all have an issue with a person who has been a part of the military, I'll be there with a bunch of my team, refer them over to me. I've been I myself have been a part of the military for a long time, as have my team members. And so I'd love to be part of those cases.
yeah, yes. And so again, it's so funny. One of the big issues when the courtyard before it was open, people were complaining that they're not going to allow pets in there, but they do. They don't allow drugs in. They hand people. I don't know that they have the boxes yet, but their plan is when you come in, it's a drug-free zone. You can't have or use drugs there. So they're going to give people a box, and you can put the stuff in your box, and they'll store your box. You can be high as a kite when you're in there, but you can't use when you're in there. If you need to leave and get a fix, they will hand you the box and whatever's in the box. And then you can leave, and then you can come back. These people seem to have been doing this a long time and really have thought through the issues that they're going to run into and working with this population, really to transition them to housing. Yes?
We're arriving at 8.
8 o'clock. Yes, thank you.
When you go in the gate, it's just straight to the right.
Yeah. And it's after 7. So any other questions?
How long would you like to be there?
We hope the event goes till noon. Yeah. Will you join me in thanking Allison? She did an awesome job, and we really like. Thank you.